Just after midnight on July 10, 2026, over the South China Sea, a rocket booster, the height of a 20-story building, fell out of the sky on purpose. It had launched minutes earlier, done its job of hurling a satellite towards space, and separated. Now it was coming back down, engines relighting, slowing itself in a controlled, powered descent, steering toward a single ship, waiting alone in the dark ocean. And then it did something no rocket had ever done before. As it neared the deck of that ship, 4 hooks deployed from the body of the booster. A net was stretched taut across the vessel, and the falling rocket, guided with almost unbelievable precision, let itself be caught, its hooks snagging the net, the whole stage arrested and held, standing intact on the deck of a ship in the middle of the sea. China had just caught a rocket in a net. With that catch, China became only the second country in the entire history of spaceflight to recover an orbital-class rocket booster intact and in a controlled way. The first, and until that night the only one, was the United States, specifically SpaceX, which spent the last decade turning reusable rockets from science fiction into a routine that reshaped the economics of getting to space. And China did it with a twist no one had ever pulled off. Not on landing legs, the way SpaceX does it, but by catching the booster in a net on a ship. Now, I want to be honest with you from the very first minute, because this story gets wildly overhyped in both directions, and the truth is more interesting than the spin. This does not mean China has caught up to SpaceX. It has not. SpaceX has a decade-long head start and launches a reusable rocket roughly every couple of days. This was one successful recovery on a rocket's very first flight, but it was a genuine, verified, enormous milestone. The single hardest step in reusable spaceflight, cleared for the first time on a rocket that China is building specifically to land its astronauts on the moon before 2030. Today, we are going to walk through why landing a rocket is one of the hardest things humans have ever attempted, why reusability changed everything about space, the strange and clever reason China chose a net instead of legs, exactly what happened that night, and, with clear eyes, how far China actually is from matching the company it is chasing. By the end, you will understand why a booster caught in a net over the South China Sea is one of the most important things that happened in space this year. Before we get into it, if you enjoy videos like this, hit the like button right now. These take a serious amount of research and time to put together, and every like pushes this video out to more people who would love it. Subscribe as well, so you never miss what we cover next. Let's get into it. To understand why catching a booster is such a big deal, you have to understand the single most wasteful thing about spaceflight. For its first 60 years, we threw the rockets away. Think about how insane that is. A rocket is one of the most complex, precise, expensive machines humanity knows how to build. A tube packed with engines capable of producing millions of pounds of thrust, guidance computers, plumbing, and structure engineered to survive forces that would crush anything ordinary. And for the entire history of spaceflight, we used each one exactly once, and then let it fall into the ocean and sink, or burn up, or smash to pieces. Every single launch meant building a brand new rocket from scratch. Imagine if airlines worked this way. You buy a jumbo jet, you fly it from New York to London one time, and then when it lands, you scrap it. You throw the entire aircraft away and build a new one for the next flight. Air travel would cost a fortune, and almost no one would ever fly. That is exactly how space worked. It is the single biggest reason getting to orbit was so brutally expensive that only governments and the largest corporations could afford it. The dream of reusing rockets is as old as rockets themselves. Everyone understood the price. If you could fly a rocket, bring the most expensive part back, and fly it again, you could slash the cost of reaching space by an enormous margin. The most valuable part is the first stage, the booster, the bottom section with the majority of the engines, the part that does the initial heavy lifting before separating and falling away. Save and reuse that, and you save most of the cost of the whole vehicle. For decades, everyone knew the prize, and no one could claim it, because bringing a booster back in one piece turned out to be one of the hardest engineering problems ever attempted. And to appreciate why, you have to picture what that booster is actually doing on the way down. Here is the challenge, and when you really sit with it, it borders on absurd. The booster has just launched. It has burned most of its fuel accelerating a payload toward orbit, which means it is now traveling at thousands of kilometers per hour, high in the sky, and, crucially, it is nearly empty. A rocket with its fuel burned off is like a giant, thin-walled soda can, enormous, but light and delicate relative to its size, and no longer balanced the way it was when full. Now you have to take this thing, moving at hypersonic speed, and bring it back to a soft, controlled, upright stop on a precise spot. And you have to do it by flying the rocket backwards. The booster has to flip itself around so its engines point in the direction of travel. It has to relight some of those engines that were designed to run at full blast on the way up, and throttle them down to a fraction of their power, controlling the descent like riding a column of fire in reverse. It has to steer constantly, fighting wind and its own instability, using small fins and precise engine gimbaling, because balancing a tall, empty tube vertically on a jet of flame is like trying to balance a broomstick on your palm. Except the broomstick is the size of a building falling from the edge of space, and if it tips even slightly too far, it is gone, and the timing is merciless. The engines have to fire at exactly the right instant, produce exactly the right amount of thrust, and cut off at precisely the right moment so the booster arrives at its target with almost zero velocity, right at the surface, not 10 meters too high, where it would drop and crash, and not too low, where it would slam into the deck. There is no room for error, and there is no second chance. You get one attempt, and physics does not grade on a curve. For years, this was considered by many to be nearly impossible for a real orbital rocket. There were spectacular, fiery failures. SpaceX itself crashed booster after booster into the ocean and onto landing platforms, dramatic explosions that became famous, before it finally, in the mid-2000s, started sticking the landing. And once it did, it changed the entire industry overnight, because it proved the impossible thing was possible. The race was on for everyone else to figure out how to do it too. And that race is exactly what China just took a giant step in, using a completely different method. When SpaceX solved rocket landing, it did it with landing legs. The booster comes down, and in the final moments, unfolds 4 sturdy legs from its base, then sets itself down gently on those legs, standing upright on a landing pad or on a ship at sea. It is the image everyone now associates with a rocket landing, the tall booster settling onto its own feet in a cloud of exhaust. China, on this flight, did something different. Its booster did not land on legs. It was caught in a net. The rocket, called the Long March 10B, came down in the same controlled, powered, engines-firing way, but instead of deploying legs to stand on, it deployed 4 hooks, and waiting for it was a specially built recovery ship with a large, tensioned net rigged across it. The booster guided itself down into that net. Its hooks caught the cables, and the net arrested and held the entire stage. The company that built it called it the world's first successful net system capture of a carrier rocket. Now, why on earth would you choose a net over legs? It sounds harder, and in some ways it is, but there is a genuinely clever engineering trade-off behind it, and it is worth understanding because it tells you how China is thinking. Landing legs are heavy. They are big, strong, mechanical structures that have to fold up, survive the entire launch, then deploy flawlessly and absorb the impact of a landing. And every kilogram of leg is a kilogram of mass you have to carry all the way up and back down. Mass that is not payload. In the brutal math of rockets, where every kilogram matters enormously, the weight of landing legs is a real penalty. It means either less payload to orbit or less fuel available for the landing itself. A net capture system flips that burden around. Instead of the rocket carrying its own landing structure, the heavy, complex catching apparatus stays on the ground, or rather, on the ship. The booster only needs lightweight hooks that frees the rocket to carry more payload or keep more fuel in reserve. It is an elegant idea. Move the weight off the thing you have to launch and onto the thing that stays put. But, and this is the honest catch, it comes with its own serious costs. Catching a falling rocket in a net demands even more precision from the vehicle than landing on legs, because your margin for error is is smaller. You have to hit the net, not just a general area. And the recovery ship itself becomes a critical, expensive, specialized piece of infrastructure that has to be in exactly the right place and survive the process. Whether the net approach ultimately scales as well as legs is a genuinely open question that only repeated flights will answer. China made a bold, unconventional bet. That night, the bet paid off, but one success is not proof the method wins in the long run. So with all that in mind, let's walk through what actually happened. It was just after midnight, Eastern Time, when the Long March 10B lifted off from the Hainan commercial launch site on China's southern island of Hainan. This was the rocket's very first flight, its debut. And unlike a pure test, it was not flying empty. It carried a real satellite as its payload, which it successfully delivered to orbit. So the rocket had to do its actual job and attempt the historic recovery, both on the same flight, the first time it ever flew. The vehicle itself is a serious machine. It stands about 63 meters tall, over 200 feet, and weighs around 760 metric tons, fully fueled. Its first stage is powered by 7 engines burning kerosene and liquid oxygen, and it can lift roughly 16 metric tons of payload to low Earth orbit in its reusable configuration. For comparison, that is a genuinely powerful rocket, not quite the payload of SpaceX's workhorse Falcon 9, which carries around 22 tons, but firmly in the same class. About 2.5 minutes into flight, the first stage finished its burn and separated from the upper stage, which continued on to deliver the satellite. And then the booster began its journey home. Over the following minutes, it reoriented, relit its engines, and descended under power toward the South China Sea, where the recovery ship, named fittingly in a way that translates to Navigator, was waiting. Roughly 6 minutes after separation, around 11 minutes after liftoff, it happened. The booster, trailing smoke, descended toward the ship, deployed its 4 hooks, and was caught by the tensioned net. China's National Space Corporation confirmed the successful recovery. The booster stood intact on the deck. The satellite reached its correct orbit. Both halves of the mission succeeded on the first attempt. The reaction inside China was electric. A government spokesperson posted about it publicly, calling it a historic day and a major leap toward reusable launch capability. Shares in Chinese aerospace companies jumped so sharply that several hit their daily trading limits, and the state media coverage immediately pointed to the detail that makes this more than a technical achievement. China said it plans to fly that very same booster stage again on another launch before the end of the year. That last part is the real tell. Recovering a booster is only half the point. The entire reason to bring it back is to fly it again, which is exactly where the honest comparison with SpaceX has to come in, because reflying is where the true difficulty lies and where America's lead is enormous. This is the part where a lot of coverage loses its grip on reality in one direction or the other. So let me give you the honest, calibrated version, because it matters. First, the achievement is real and it is big. Recovering an orbital-class booster in a controlled way is the single hardest step in reusable spaceflight, and before that night, exactly one entity on the planet had ever done it: SpaceX. China joining that list and doing it with a novel net method on a rocket's first flight while also delivering a satellite is a genuine, world-class engineering accomplishment. It is not propaganda to say so. Independent Western space journalists reported it as a major milestone, but now the reality check, and it is a big one. SpaceX has a roughly decade-long head start, and that gap is measured not in months, but in an entire body of hard-won experience. SpaceX does not just land boosters occasionally. It launches its reusable Falcon 9 around 150 times a year, roughly 3 times every week, and it reuses individual boosters over and over, some of them dozens of times. That is not a demonstration. That is an industrial operation, a rhythm, a machine that runs constantly. China has now landed one booster once. It has not yet reflown it. It has not yet proven it can do this reliably, repeatedly, and cheaply, which is the entire point of reusability. The distinction is everything. Landing a booster once proves you have solved the physics. Landing them constantly, turning them around quickly, and flying them again and again proves you have solved the economics. And the economics are what actually changed the world. SpaceX's dominance does not come from the fact that it can land a rocket. It comes from the fact that it lands them so routinely that it can offer launches cheaper and more often than anyone else on Earth, which is why it now launches the majority of all the mass humanity country sends to space. It is also worth being fair about the broader Chinese effort. We have covered China's lunar ambitions on this channel, the plan to land humans on the moon by 2030, and build a permanent research station there in the years after. That program needs rockets. Specifically, it needs powerful, reliable, and increasingly reusable rockets to haul the crew capsules, the landers, and eventually the cargo for a lunar base off the Earth and toward the moon. The Long March 10 family is a core piece of that architecture. So the reusability milestone we just watched is not happening in isolation. It is a building block in China's march to the moon, providing data and proving technologies that feed directly into the crewed lunar program. And step back to the bigger strategic picture, because reusable rockets are about far more than saving money on satellite launches. The ability to get to space cheaply and often is quietly becoming one of the most important capabilities a nation can have. It determines how fast you can build out satellite constellations for communication and navigation. It determines your capacity in an era where space is increasingly tied to military power and national defense. And it determines whether you can sustain the constant flow of launches that a moon program, a space station, and a deep space future all require. Cheap, frequent access to space is the foundation everything else in the modern space race is built on. For decades, the United States held a commanding, almost unchallenged lead in this most fundamental capability, supercharged in recent years by SpaceX turning reusability into a routine. That lead is still large, but on that night over the South China Sea, for the first time, another country demonstrated it could do the hardest part, too. The monopoly on recovering orbital boosters ended. It is now a field of two. Let's pull it together, because the significance sits on three levels. Technically, China cleared the single most difficult hurdle in reusable spaceflight, and it did so with genuine flair, a first-ever net capture at sea on a rocket's maiden flight, while also completing the actual satellite mission. That is a hard, real, independently confirmed achievement that only one other entity on the planet had ever managed. Competitively, it is a milestone, not a finish line, and the honest framing matters. China has proven it can do the hard thing once. SpaceX has proven it can do the hard thing 150 times a year and reuse the same rocket dozens of times. The gap between "we did it" and "we do it constantly, cheaply, and reliably" is exactly the gap that took SpaceX years of relentless work to cross, and it is the gap that actually determines who dominates access to space. China is now on that path, with both its state giant and a swarm of private startups pushing hard, but it has years of proving still ahead of it. And strategically, this connects to everything. Reusable rockets are the key to cheap, frequent space access, and cheap, frequent space access is the key to satellite constellations, to national security in orbit, and to China's declared ambition of landing astronauts on the moon before 2030 and building a base there. This booster caught in a net is a piece of that entire puzzle clicking into place. The pattern, one more time, is the one this channel keeps running into. The breakthrough was pioneered elsewhere. SpaceX cracked reusable orbital rockets first and deserves enormous credit for proving it could be done at all. But China watched, learned, invested relentlessly, and then arrived at the same capability by its own path, complete with a novel method no one had tried. Pioneered in America, now replicated and re-engineered in China. 60 years ago, we threw every rocket away. A decade ago, one American company proved you could bring the most expensive part back and fly it again, and rewrote the economics of space. And just after midnight on a July night in 2026, a rocket booster fell out of the dark sky over the South China Sea, deployed 4 hooks, and let itself be caught in a net on the deck of a waiting ship, and the club of nations that can do the hardest thing in spaceflight doubled in size. The race to the moon and to own the road to space just became a real contest. If you enjoyed this, hit the like button and subscribe so you're here for the next one. It genuinely takes a huge amount of research to put a video like this together. together, and your support is what keeps this channel going. Now, I want to hear from you. On one hand, this is a genuinely historic achievement. Only the second country ever to recover an orbital rocket booster, and it did it with a method nobody had tried before. On the other hand, SpaceX is landing and reflying rockets every couple of days, and China has done it exactly once, so the gap is still enormous. So here is my honest question. Is this the beginning of China genuinely catching America in space, or a single impressive milestone that is still a decade and thousands of launches behind? And be honest, before this video, did you even know that for 60 years, we just